Good afternoon, everybody. I must tell you, I'm really pleased to be here, and I found a new solution for jet lag. Just walk through this Boborsa and all the energy coming from there. It's great. Matti, thank you for the very kind remarks, and you too, Reuven and Yair. But you know, I arrived late yesterday afternoon in time to stand in the back for a few moments and hear Martin Rappaport. And I think I got it right, but I know he was talking about Israel and New York, and for them to, these two traditional powerhouses in our industry, to take advantage of the market today with their marketing expertise and their selling ability and exploit that. And I think obviously what the two of you have done helps contribute to that. But you know, as I reflected on it last night, I think more importantly, what the two of you have done is created a synergy, and you can kind of feel it walking through and listening to the traders. And I think it's not just important for New York and for Israel, but it's important for the diamond industry to be able to compete against electronics and travel. And I think it's these kind of events. They'll have an immediate a surge of sales, but I think the synergy and the relationships that it builds will have a much longer impact on our business. So again, congratulations to the two of you. Thank you. I'm going to talk to you today about something not so exciting, but I think it's a reality of what we have to deal with in the marketplace. And I'm going to focus on synthetic diamonds today. And I'm going to go rather quickly because I don't want to take too much time away from your trading. So before I start, though, I also wanted to recognize Gabriel Alian who is Gabriel. Maybe you can stand up for those of you who don't know him. Gabriel's been running our laboratory here in the Boborsa and doing an exceptional job, and I'm really proud of the work that he's doing. So what I'm going to cover today is probably be about 30 minutes, maybe even a little less, to update you on the latest developments with synthetic diamonds. And as a kind of a snapshot, I've put on the screen here a little bit of history. So this isn't a new issue for us, and I think as an industry, we've been very fortunate not to have a serious crisis with consumer confidence, and so I think it's something that we really have to pay more and more attention to. The technology is improving. There's more and more of this product on the market. As I think you know, about 6 months ago, there was an incident that really had created international attention of synthetics being sold without disclosure. And I can tell you it actually drew law enforcement from Belgium and from the United States. So there was a very serious reaction to it, and it reminded me even more and more how important detection and disclosure is. So a little snapshot of the history of synthetic diamonds, and I'm going to talk about two types. There's that's grown in high pressure, high temperature, so almost simulating the environment that happens deep within the earth. As I was preparing for this, I went through GIA's archives, and I found some of these headlines that we had cut from the newspaper, and it was, you heard Matti talk about my mentor, Bob Crowningshield, that he had cut from the newspaper. And I was going through the files, I said, boy, these look like they could be published today or 6 months ago. But in fact, they were published in the New York papers and London papers in 1955. So this is really when GIA began to very carefully watch synthetic diamonds and the evolution. So fast forwarding, it was about 1970 that GE, this was a very, at that time, an industrial product, not something that you'd really think of for the gem industry. But in 1970, the realization came that there really could be gem quality synthetic diamonds. This is the most common apparatus today for producing synthetic diamonds. It's a Russian design, but these are used in many of the facilities throughout the world. And as I said, this process simulates more of what happens in the Earth. So quite high temperature, about 1200 degrees, and 5 or 6 gigapascals pressure. So we're talking about 50 or 60,000 times atmospheric pressure. So lots and lots of heat and pressure with a source of carbon, and diamonds can be grown. Now, interestingly enough, this basic technology has been in use for this entire time. So it's not like today they have found some new fast way to easily grow gem quality synthetic diamonds. So the techniques are really the same. For those of you certainly in here, this will be relative to you. So if you were to see the rough, you'd recognize that the synthetics typically look different. It's more of a cube octahedron growth pattern, very unusual to see that in a natural crystal. And it really has something to do with the rapid growth and the preferential deposits and slight differences in chemistry that create this growth in the laboratory versus of course, the most typical shape of natural diamonds. So synthetic diamonds grown by this HP, high pressure, high temperature method, now are available in quite a range of colors and sizes. So just with the nitrogen impurities, it can create these quite beautiful, vivid yellow or orangey yellow stones. And then with a few parts per million of boron being introduced, you can produce blue diamonds. So I was talking with somebody earlier today, and when you think in nature how rare blue diamonds have become, one can see certainly a kind of a sub-market developing for these in the future. In addition, of course, the area that I think we're most concerned with are colorless or near colorless stones. So this gives you a range of some of the products that have been produced in the last couple of years by this method. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about the chemical vapor deposition, but let me stay on these for a moment. It's rather challenging for all of the synthetic producers to still grow colorless synthetic by this method today. What happens is they have to slow down the growth rate quite a bit to prevent kind of yellow color coming in or a lot of inclusions. So this is really not the preferred method for producing colorless stones today. And the other thing is, a key point, you can really usually only grow one stone at a time in that apparatus that I showed you. So I think part of the challenge and part of the expansion of this market today is this kind of after-growth treatment. So they grow the crystals and polish them, or sometimes before polishing, can subject the diamonds to high temperature annealing or moderate temperature annealing or radiation or some combination of that. In addition, because of the expertise has become better and better, certain synthetics are grown kind of in a preferential way that allow for this color change to occur. Now, on one hand, it's scary to see these colors that are so, of course, if they were natural, it would be tremendously expensive. On the other hand, I think we can look at it, I think, in another way, that it exposes consumers to colors of diamonds that they perhaps didn't even know occurred. So again, the key thing is for us to be able to identify them, and you also, as dealers, to have some confidence or at least know when you need help. This happens to be the largest polished one that we have seen so far, so just over 4 carats. So quite getting up there in size, a beautiful color, and rather clean. This one was produced in the United States by the Gemesis group in Florida. Now, I think this is something that myself and my colleagues talk about a lot. It's rather challenging, and I think we would all worry about. And occasionally we experience this. So we take a piece of jewelry like this that you've seen there on the right, and for it to be mixed with natural and synthetic diamonds. And one may say, well, from a cost standpoint, those small stones, it really isn't worth it. I mean, they're not very valuable. Why do I have to worry about it? And again, I think it really comes down to consumer confidence. And if you're put yourself in a retail brand that you're protecting your reputation. So even one or two small synthetic diamonds like this that pass through undisclosed and are later detected by somebody in the public, I think can work backwards and impact all of us. The crystal growth, as you see, that's that cube octahedron growth, and those are actually pulled from that very tiny pile there on the right. So the good thing is, if you're looking at rough, there is quite a distinctive look that you can really identify them very easily with a loupe. So, kind of in summary, what we see in this product is weight from very small to about 4 carats. A whole gamut of colors, VVS to imperfect, and the whole range of types of diamonds. So type 1A, 1B, 2A, and 2B. And the reason I say this, it's becoming a bit more challenging. At one time, we expected this type of growth to be either type 1B or type 2B, and very occasionally type 2A. So again, the product mix with technology and so on is expanding. So how do we identify them? Metal inclusion. So in order for the diamonds to grow, they use a catalyst, a flux catalyst, usually nickel or iron. And that catalyst allows for faster growth. But at the same time, it often gets caught up in the growth, precipitates into, gets encapsulated inside the diamond, and is actually looks like metal flakes or metal inclusions. So again, even with a hand lens, or amazingly enough with a strong magnet, sometimes you can just pick these diamonds up because of the metal inclusions, which would be diagnostic of it being a synthetic. There's a characteristic graining, which I'll show you in color zoning, and fluorescence patterns, and a few spectroscopic features. So here are some of those inclusions that I talked about. So these, although something similar to a carbon spot or something you'd see in a natural stone, these are much more reflective and often in little platelets. And I mentioned to you about this specific growth pattern that occurs. We've coined the term kind of an hourglass graining, and that is really related to that cube octahedral graining. So seeing this pattern in a Yellowstone would be a reason to be concerned about its origin. Color zoning, and again, this is related to slight differences in chemistry in each growth direction where you have these colorless and colored areas. And again, of course, this can happen in natural diamond, but these patterns are really distinctive to synthetics. Many of you are probably familiar with the instruments that De Beers has developed. We've worked very closely with them over the years. Actually going back to our first collaboration went back to 1960, working with their research department in South Africa, and more recently with the team in Maidenhead over the last couple of decades. And they've developed a couple of these devices, and this one is a high energy shortwave imaging system. So what it does is exploits these different growth sectors. So when we put the diamond under this, excite it with the high energy shortwave radiation or ultraviolet, these are the kind of images that we get, which are right away diagnostic and proof of synthetic. I mentioned about the metal inclusion, so I'll just kind of go quickly there. Those features we're able to identify through very sensitive spectroscopic methods. So in summary, the HPHT as I said, becoming more commercially viable product through different doping agents and treatments. A range of colors can be produced. But again, we're really confident through some very simple, in many cases, gemological properties that many of you can use. But there are cases where more advanced spectroscopic tests are needed to identify them. But to date, we feel quite confident in being able to identify them. Moving on to CVD, this is the product you've heard more about recently. And I alluded to earlier, it's much easier to produce these in a colorless form. So these were this was a growth method of the stones that were described a few months ago. Now, the difference here is none of that real high pressure is used. It's really almost the pressure that occurs in a vacuum. So it's a very slight pressure and a much lower temperature. Interestingly enough, although we talk about this as a new process for growing synthetics, it actually predated the GE process by a year. So the first synthetic diamonds are actually produced through a CVD method, but they were not single crystal, but aggregates of very small diamonds, which were essentially kind of bonded together. And that's a very easy thing to do, or relatively easy, but to grow single crystal is still rather challenging, and that's where the technology has been in, so much work has been done in the last few years. I'm sorry, go back one. So this is you saw that kind of washing machine looking device for HPHT growth, and this is the reactor that's used for CVD. So again, especially you need kind of a carbon source. In this case, it's usually methane gas with a high concentration of hydrogen, and then kind of a high temperature plasma. And the interesting thing, if you look on the bottom there, you see kind of multiple seeds in there. And what you have is a kind of a temperature gradient where the diamond starts to go to the bottom of the vessel and starts to deposit layer by layer on top of those seeds. This is a factory that we recently visited in the United States, and you can see a very serious number of these growth apparatuses that for producing CVD. As I mentioned, the most promising part of this technology is the ability to grow many samples at one time. So you see, I think there are probably about 40 on there. Those are very thin plates of synthetic diamond, and which acts as a seed, and then you grow the CVD on top of that. This is a brief history of over the last 10 years of the progress. These are some of the first stones we saw, not really very large or very good colors by Apollo. And then a few years later, they started to produce better qualities, larger sizes, getting close to, I think the princess cut there was about a carat in size. One thing I will say about a challenge of growing CVD, it's very hard to grow thick. So even to grow, it grows at about 30 microns per hour. So to grow a 1 carat stone would take about a week to do it. But again, if you're growing multiple pieces at one time, it does start to be kind of commercially viable. These are, again, pink diamonds that are kind of preferentially doped in the growth process, and then they are secondarily treated with irradiation and annealing to create these strong pink colors. More recently, and I think for the first time in this group last year, we actually encountered some of these samples that were internally flawless. So you can see the identification part becomes more and more challenging. I think this is going to be published this week. This is the largest one we saw. This was a couple of weeks ago in the laboratory in colorless stone. So it's about twice the size of the previous one that of the colorless that we have, or near colorless, I guess this one is, or J to K, so a little darker than that. But again, really you can see the technology evolving and developing. And the color is not so good, you'd say, but I can tell you that using some of the same techniques used for natural diamonds, that color can be lightened or made to be near colorless or colorless. I'm going to go back to talk about De Beers for a moment, because they've been, I think, strong allies and partners with GIA in the industry, and I don't think most people realize that they are exceptionally good at diamond growing and have been for a long time. They sell millions of carats of industrial diamond for industry, but they've done their work in this area has helped us a great deal, and of course their understanding understanding what the properties are and what can be available, and they have a lot of expertise in this area, and we work closely to understand what the latest technology is. So how to identify these? Again, almost similar to the HPHT, there are some inclusions that are outstanding, and they're little black inclusions, but I must tell you, sometimes these actually do look more like what we would call a carbon spot. And it's actually, they call it diamond-like carbon or non-diamond carbon that also precipitates out in the growth. Strong strain, strong birefringence. And the fluorescence to not long wave, which you're used to using, but short wave is diagnostic. And a specific growth pattern, which is really the most compelling identification feature. And then again, a few spectroscopic features. So there's those black inclusions, that diamond-like carbon, still a little odd looking. They look like flakes of black in there, and I think if you see them a couple of times, you recognize that they are different looking than what we see normally in a natural diamond. There's that strong birefringence, although you can see that in occasionally in a natural stone, but quite common here, and another one of those flakes on the right. Again, using shortwave ultraviolet, a strong shortwave source, and the as-grown color is this orange color, which also is a very good indication that you're dealing with a CVD synthetic. I mentioned earlier that the color can be lightened through HPHT processing. When that is done, that fluorescence color now changes to a green. This is a real important slide from a laboratory standpoint. Remember, I talked to you about the CVD grows layer by layer, and you can actually see that in this image, and that's what you're seeing are that layered structure of growth, which is really something that cannot be removed, because there are certain features that spectroscopic features that can be altered and changed, but this is something that is the most important identification feature. Again, I'll just show you one of these spectroscopic slides to give you an idea of the things that do go on. So in natural diamond, you see on what is to your right there, the common absorption feature in the infrared that's related to the presence of hydrogen. So in CVD, that is shifted. So it's when we see that, that's also a proof that we're dealing with the CVD. However, they've recognized, the producers, if you heat the diamond high enough, you can actually shift that 3123 back over to the position of a natural stone. So we see more and more of that kind of thing going on today, and really, it's the kind of thing that is not done to change the diamond in any way to improve its appearance, but really to make it more challenging for a laboratory. Last slide of these features, but an important one. Those two, that little doublet there at the 736 are silicon vacancies, which are very, very common and a key identifying feature in these diamonds. The other two peaks were ones that we had identified, had never been reported in the literature before. We're still not sure of the cause, but interestingly enough, we've done some experimentation. They can also be removed through heating, which takes away another key signature. So, still CVD, just getting to the end here, is relatively new to the gem market, but significant improvement in quality in the last few years. A range of colors and sizes now, 2 carat plus. And typically cleaner than those grown through HPHT. Mainly produced for research purposes because they have great applications in electronics and other things, but more and more availability in the gem market. And often these take a well-equipped gem lab to identify them. The last product, and this is really rather new, it's a quite interesting concept. It's at the Research Institute in Japan that's sponsored by Sumitomo. They make these essentially little rods of synthetic diamond, and it's a process that was, to my knowledge, had not been experimented with before because it takes exceedingly high temperature. And to give you some context, and I'll close this, but a famous researcher at diamond researcher at De Beers, who's no longer living, who in the 1970s was one of the first to do experimentations with synthetic and annealing, used the expression, when you heat diamond to about 2200 degrees, it almost becomes like Jell-O. So you can imagine it almost starts to lose its structure. This process is actually going above that temperature with pressures almost double what the traditional HPHT growth is. So they're really taking tiny particles, nano-sized particles of diamond, growing them, and then squeezing them together under this heat and pressure. So this is actually diamond. And these little cylinders that are grown. And this is an example of one, a finished stone. And they cannot be mechanically polished. There's no way they can be polished because there's no grain. The grain it's an aggregate, so there's no grain. So these are polished through pulse lasers. So the whole stones are fabricated through lasering. Fortunately, in the few samples that we have seen, they have very characteristic identification features, so will not be difficult to identify, but again, a brand new product to the market. I shouldn't say that. It isn't in the market, and I'm not sure that they have, at least at this point, any interest in it. It's been more of kind of a scientific research project, but these things tend to evolve, as you know, and perhaps it will be something to deal with in the future. Again, some clear identification features, so not a concern. This is my last slide, and I just want to reiterate these key points. So the keys to correct identification, and I think I'm speaking really from a laboratory or research side. Certainly we need a thorough screening process that every stone is tested, no matter the size. You need proper instrumentation. So we've had to add more and more instrumentation since, when I think back at my time being around GIA for more than 3 decades, I see the advances in technology and instrumentation. In addition to that, we've had to bring on more and more well-trained scientific and technical staff to identify these results. The other important thing is an ongoing experimentation and research program. GIA invests a tremendous amount treating, growing, cutting, breaking diamond to better understand these properties. And I think it's really important for us to do that so that we can better understand and ultimately provide identification features. And then, of course, a large, well-characterized database. And by that, we need a population of known natural samples, those that we have treated. So then when something comes into the lab as an unknown, you have these two good reference points to help identify them. That's it. Thank you very much. Again, good luck to you the rest of the week, and congratulations.
שאלות ותשובות, תום מוכן לענות. וזו הזדמנות, it's opportunity, thank you, because you are sponsoring also the cocktails after.
Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Hi, Tom. Welcome to Israel. We know each other also 3 decades. Since we see so many small new type of synthetic diamonds, is there a way that the GIA will provide? Is there a way that the GIA will provide the diamond dealers with some kind of a small kit to basically identify something that they feel is dangerous? For example, there is no way we can send all the diamonds to the lab. Is there a way to create some kind of a, pre-testing tool that will warn the diamond dealer, take care of this stone, look at those are dangerous, those are probably okay? So I think that the industry may need, now that we see this thing, what do you think?
I think that's an excellent question and point, and I can tell you that is something we're working very aggressively on. And I'm hoping sometime, not in 2013, but 2014, that we have an offering of a device or a few devices that will be simple to use, and not only will work with loose stones, but with mounted. So it's an excellent question and important one.
Thank you, Tom. I have to believe in the couple of decades since HPHT stones have been identified that the cost of producing them has declined. What prevents a lot of other institutions from going forward with the same technology and, and creating more synthetic diamonds, for example?
I think still the reason that we don't see as many, it's still, the equipment is, not that it's expensive. I think you can buy those apparatus probably for $50,000 to $75,000 per unit. But you still really need to control the growth conditions very well. So, for example, any kind of the ramp up temperature, ramp down, if there's any interruption in the power source or the feed, the results just are not very good. And right now, I just don't think there has been that much demand. And to your point, I think once there's pull, perhaps, in the market, there will be more people who get into the business. But they're still fairly expensive to produce. Because of the equipment and power and so on. Again, I just don't think at this point there has developed a parallel market. I think when we talk about, and I think Mr. Rapport talked about yesterday, and I think from what I understand, clearly we're reaching a point in the not too distant future where the supply of natural diamond is not going to meet demand. So I do suspect at that time there will be and again, I think for all of us, it would be best kind of a parallel market, not one that confuses the natural market. We hope. Yeah, yeah.
Hello. Mr. Tom Moses. Hi. First of all, thank you you came from this special event. What's bothered me lately, and especially for our industry, it's the result of the laboratory GIA in India, that you receive GHIJK colors, and suddenly we receive brownish, grayish, greenish, and I believe it's from Zimbabwe. How the GIA will solve this mainly problem when we see it on the RapNet, some offer 43 below, and in our industry here, we're asking for 15 or 25 below. It's ridiculous.
You know, that's something that a question or a concern that I've heard raised from time to time. Is that rough material from Zimbabwe? Probably most of it is, or much of it is. But if one looks back historically at different periods, when one looks at the famous Zwaneng mine in Botswana, probably the most prolific producing mine in the world, there have been, depending on the level of mining, there are, and many of you probably know this who have produced goods from there, a lot of that material was green, in fact, or had a green cast. So it's not really a new problem, but I think the scope of it is much larger today than it once was. Now, we, in the GIA system, if a stone has a body color other than brown or yellow or grayish, and it's darker than an F, so G or lower, then we would call that color out. So call it a faint green or faint blue or so on. The challenge becomes, and I think much of that material from Zimbabwe, it's kind of a mix of brownish, greenish, yellowish, and being able to visually or instrumentally kind of neatly segregate it into categories is quite challenging. Now we are looking at some instrumental support to help us do that, and to better identify those stones. But it's a good point, interesting challenge, something that we're working on. I would say though, you know, through our history, when we first, of course I was not part of it, but in 1945 or so is when we first started the diamond grading system. We recognized that there were ranges and slight different tints in each letter grade. And it was never our intent to make that scale so fine that we would call out every little tint in every color grade. I think it would be dangerous really for the market. And I must tell you, visually and instrumentally, it's an extremely challenging thing to do to have high reproducibility. But it is something we're working on. Thank you. Yes?
First of all, thank you very much for having GIA in Israel. We're very thankful. Thank you for coming here. Sorry. And I want to ask two questions. First of all, I understand that you, as a consumer confidence company, still see the diamond, the synthetic diamond, as a different material, but you use the same terminology as a diamond. You use DH, whatever, VS1, SI2, and thus enabling the people to use the same system of the diamond, to use Rappaport, to use all the platform that we are using, and actually endangering our system, using our system that has confidence, that speaks about real diamonds, and mixing them in. That is question number one. Question number two is, I think that it will be highly appreciated if GIA can maybe push the Congress of the diamond to mark all the stones that are coming through her system in a way that from the table till the cullet, there will be a line that any consumer can turn the stone, flip the stone on the side, see the line, and immediately know this is a synthetic piece of diamond. And that way, they cannot recut the stone to a smaller stone, take off the engraving, and sell it as a regular stone. Thank you.
I'll try to answer you briefly. Let me first start with saying, although I understand your points, especially in America, as a public benefit company, we have to serve everybody. So, concerns about antitrust or things, but I must say, even forgetting that, I personally pushed this idea to issue reports on synthetic diamonds at GIA. And I must tell you, not everybody at GIA agreed. And the reason I did it was I recognized over a long period of time, the closer we can keep this product to us and induce it coming to our labs and be able to essentially trace it, mark it, put the proper nomenclature on reports as opposed to a much misleading nomenclature that some companies use to sell it, in the long run, it would protect natural diamond and the consumer much better. As you know, we do use a different kind of report. Although we use the GIA nomenclature, it's used in a coarser way. So we don't say DEF, we would just say colorless, or call it near colorless. We don't say GHIJ, it's just called near colorless. We don't say VVS1, VVS2, we say VVS. So there's kind of a coarser language, a different color report that distinguishes it. And I must tell you, by those stones coming in, you watch, it gives us a window into the evolution of what they're doing, how they're changing things. So I really, I kind of stand by the decision we made. And as I said, it was controversial even within GIA. But I think it's the right thing. It's almost like the closer we keep it in strong hands, the more we can kind of protect it and make sure it's represented correctly. But to put some kind of mark in that would, essentially harm the diamond or deface the diamond, again, it's just not something that we could do appropriately.
You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to harm the product that is given to you.
We're not allowed to harm the product. Now, again, could we write some special agreement, but who would ever agree to submit a diamond to us if we were to do that? So that's why we don't do it.
See, the question I'm asking
Last question.
is the people who manufacture those synthetics, I heard they are credited big diamond dealers in India. One is the owner of Genesis, I think, and he is the one who sold the stones while he knew it was synthetic. Nothing is done against him, I heard. And secondly, I heard that the Beers is also manufacturing those synthetic diamonds. So those people who are manufacturing those synthetic diamonds actually, I don't know if they are reputable diamond dealers, so I don't know, maybe they see that it's the end of the diamond business. I don't know why they're producing these synthetics. That's my question.
I think it's a fair point, but I'm going to speak to De Beers. I don't really think they have any interest in undermining the natural diamond business. I think the work that they have done historically has been really too scientific to understand the properties, what can be done. Will 10 years from now, if there isn't enough natural supply, will they use that technology and create a sub or parallel market? I don't know the answer to that. But right now, I really don't worry about them. I think their motives have been pure. I will tell you that the individual involved in the incident that you talk about, I'm not sure they got away so easily. I can tell you I was personally contacted by law enforcement agencies around the world, and they were very interested in. Yeah, I think the individual may try to disassociate himself with this, but I think it was such a strong warning. I mean, he may kind of get away at this point, but I don't think he will be in the position to take a risk. And again, there's certain things I just don't feel that I'm at liberty to reveal, but I can tell you that in another instance where we received these synthetics, very similar properties, because as you can see, we study them very carefully and can kind of guess who made them even. And the FBI wanted to know, and other agencies, and they went and confiscated inventory in another part of the world. So it's drawn a lot of attention. I think there's probably more attention being paid to this than you're aware of. Is it a concern? Yes, but I mean, that's kind of the world we live in, and why I think we have to be individually diligent also. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.